In the summer of 2013, a French archaeologist named Pierre Tallet knelt in a cave on the Red Sea coast and unrolled a sheet of papyrus no one had read in 45 centuries. The handwriting belonged to a man named Merer, a mid-level official who kept a work log the way a foreman keeps a timesheet. Merer wrote about boats, about tides, about limestone, and about a place he called Akhet Khufu, the horizon of Khufu. He was describing the Great Pyramid while it was still going up. Historians had never found a living witness before, and this witness came with names, dates, and a delivery schedule. Start with the scale, because the scale is the whole problem. The Great Pyramid holds roughly 2.3 million blocks of stone. Each one weighs about 2 tons on average, and some weigh far more. Stack them and you get a building 146 meters tall, higher than anything people would raise for the next 3,800 years, until a cathedral spire in Lincoln, England, edged past it in the 14th century. Khufu's masons finished the whole thing in around 20 years. Do the arithmetic, and a block had to be quarried, moved, lifted, and set roughly every 2 or 3 minutes of daylight for 2 decades straight. The pharaoh who ordered it, Khufu, ruled Egypt around 2560 BCE in the 4th dynasty. We know almost nothing about him as a man. The only complete portrait that survives is an ivory statuette 3 inches tall, found not at Giza but at Abydos, hundreds of kilometers to the south. A king who raised the largest stone monument on earth left behind a face you could lose in your pocket. Ask most people who put it up and they will say slaves. Whip-driven thousands hauling rock under a blistering sun. That picture comes from Herodotus, a Greek tourist who visited around 450 BCE, 2,000 years after the fact, and wrote down whatever his local guides told him. He claimed 100,000 men labored in 3-month shifts. He also claimed the pyramid was covered in inscriptions listing how much the crews spent on radishes and onions. The vegetable receipt is nonsense, but the shift system turned out to be close to right, and the food was real. In 1990, a tourist riding near Giza was thrown when her horse stumbled on a low mud brick wall. That wall belonged to a cemetery. Mark Lerner and Zahi Hawass, 2 archaeologists who had spent years mapping the plateau, started digging and uncovered the graves of the builders. Not the elite, the laborers themselves. More than 600 skeletons came out of the sand, laid in small tombs shaped like miniature pyramids, arranged with care just south of the kings they served. The bones told a story no papyrus could. Many showed arthritis in the spine and knees, the wear of hauling heavy loads for years. Several had broken arms and legs that someone had set and let heal cleanly. 2 skeletons showed successful amputations, and one of those men lived 14 more years after losing a limb. These workers got real medical care. They ate bread and drank beer brewed on the site, and they butchered cattle, sheep, and goat by the thousand. No one splints a slave's fractures and then buries him in a place of honor beside the pharaoh. If this story has you hooked, the like button is a quiet way to say so. It tells the channel to keep chasing the real history under the myths. So how many people, actually? Lerner's dig into the workers' town, a sprawl of barracks and bakeries and grain stores he nicknamed the Lost City, points to a permanent staff of a few thousand, swelling to perhaps 20,000 to 25,000 during peak building. They were organized like a navy. The largest unit was a crew of maybe 2,000, split into gangs of 1,000, split again into groups of 200, and finally into teams of 20. We know the names because the gangs painted them on the blocks in red ochre, in spots meant to stay hidden inside the structure. One gang called itself the Friends of Khufu. Another, working a later pyramid, went by the Drunkards of Menkaure. Foreman with a sense of humor. Now come back to Merer and his papyrus. His logbook, the oldest inscribed papyrus ever found, covers a few months in the 27th year of Khufu's reign, near the end of the job. Merer commanded a team of about 40 sailors, and his assignment was limestone. Not just any limestone, but the fine white stone quarried at Tura across the Nile on the east bank, cut for the smooth outer casing that once made the pyramid gleam. His men loaded blocks onto wooden boats, rode the current across the river, and delivered them to a harbor at the foot of the plateau. He logged 2 or 3 round trips every 10 days. Picture the finished monument when it was new, because it looked nothing like the bare brown steps tourists climb today. It wore a skin of polished white Tura limestone, smooth from base to peak, and it may have carried a gilded pyramidion at the summit that caught the first light. The whole thing would have blazed across the desert, visible for miles. Most of that casing is gone now. A massive earthquake in 1303 shook many stones loose, and medieval crews in Cairo carted the rest away to face mosques and fortresses. A handful of casing blocks still cling to the base, and they show joints so fine they look machined. That harbor matters more than it sounds. The Nile in Khufu's day ran closer to Giza than it does now, and engineers cut canals and basins to float boats almost to the building site. In 2022, a team led by Haider Sheisha found the fossil pollen record of a long-dead branch of the river, the Khufu branch, that once carried water right up to the plateau before it dried out. The heaviest stone did not come from Tura at all. The granite for the king's chamber came from Aswan, some 800 kilometers upriver. Single roof beams above the burial chamber weigh as much as 80 tons. Crews floated them down the Nile on barges and dragged them into the very heart of the pyramid. Which leaves the hardest question of all. How do you lift a 2-ton block 140 meters into the air with no pulleys, no iron, and no wheel that could bear the weight? The Egyptians worked with copper chisels, wooden sledges, rope twisted from papyrus and palm fiber, and stone pounders. Everyone agrees the answer is ramps. Nobody agrees on the shape. The simplest guess is a single straight ramp, running up one face, growing longer and taller as the pyramid climbed. The math kills it fast. To keep a workable slope all the way up, that ramp would need to stretch nearly a mile and hold more material than the pyramid itself. A second idea wraps the ramp around the outside in a spiral hugging all 4 faces. That saves material, but buries the corners, and the corners are exactly what the surveyors needed to see to keep the structure square. The French architect Jean-Pierre Houdin argues for a third answer. He thinks the crews raised an external ramp for the bottom third, then switched to a corkscrew tunnel running just under the outer surface for the top 2/3. In 2008, a scan of the pyramid caught a faint spiral anomaly that roughly traced his tunnel. It is not proof. It is a very good hint. In 2018, a joint British and French team found something you can touch. At Hatnub, an alabaster quarry in the eastern desert, they cleared a ramp flanked by 2 staircases and a line of post holes. The workers had planted wooden posts along the ramp and looped ropes around them, turning each post into a crude pulley to help haul sledges up a steep 20-degree grade. The system is 4,500 years old, and it was still sitting there in the rock. It does not tell us exactly how Giza ran, but it shows the kind of low-tech leverage these crews had in hand. There is a second trick, and a painting gives it away. In the tomb of a nobleman named Jehuti-Hotep, carved a few centuries after Khufu, a scene shows 172 men dragging a colossal statue on a sledge. At the front, one man stands on the sledge and pours liquid onto the sand in its path. For generations, scholars read that as a ritual. In 2014, physicists at the University of Amsterdam tested it in a lab. Wet sand, dampened to just the right point, cuts the friction under a sledge by half. Too dry and the grains pile up in front of the runners. Too wet and it churns to mud. Get it right and you halve the number of men you need. The Egyptians drew the solution on a wall, and we spent 3,000 years thinking it was a prayer. Then there is the precision, the part that still unsettles engineers. The base of the Great Pyramid is level to within about 2 centimeters across 230 meters of ground. The 4 sides align to true north, south, east, and west within a small fraction of a degree, tighter than some 19th century observatories managed with brass instruments. They had no compass. Their tool was the sky. By watching a pair of stars circle the celestial pole, or by tracking the shadow of a vertical rod and marking where it fell at equal lengths before and after noon, a patient surveyor could find true north cold. To flatten the ground, they likely cut a grid of shallow channels, flooded them with water, and trimmed the bedrock down to that still surface. Up close, the joinery is uncanny. The core blocks sit rough, but the finest casing seams at the base are so tight you cannot slide a knife blade between them, sealed with a film of gypsum mortar thinner than a coin. The masons shaped hard stone with harder stone and cut it with copper saws fed with sand as an abrasive. They split blocks by carving slots, driving in wedges and levering the rock free along its grain. It was slow and it was repetitive. Multiply one careful mason by 20,000 hands over 20 years and the mountain adds up. What the papyri and the bones and the ramps add up to is not magic, it is management. Khufu's real feat was not lifting stone, it was feeding, housing, organizing, and paying a small city of workers for a generation, keeping the grain moving and the boats running and the gangs competing to outbuild one another. The man who ran the whole operation may have been Ankaf, Khufu's half-brother, whose startlingly lifelike bust survives today in Boston. He directed the largest construction project of the ancient world with bread, beer, rope, and arithmetic. Plenty is still unknown, and the honest thing is to admit it. No one wrote down the exact ramp design. We cannot say for certain how they hoisted the 80-ton granite beams into the king's chamber, and serious experts still argue over it. The pyramid keeps a few secrets even now. In 2017, a team firing cosmic ray muons through the stone detected a large hidden void above the Grand Gallery, at least 30 meters long, and in 2023 they confirmed a smaller corridor behind the north face. Nobody yet knows what either space was meant to hold. But the big secret, the one about aliens and slaves and lost technology, is no secret at all. It was paid crews, moved by river, lifted on ramps, checked against the stars, and led by men whose names we can now read off a 4,500-year-old logbook. The Great Pyramid is not evidence that someone helped us. It is evidence of what people can do when they organize around a single stubborn idea. There are more stories like this on the channel. Subscribe if you want them.